Hey everybody, welcome to Meck's online campus. Well, it's obviously Super Bowl weekend with the Bengals facing the Rams. So let's get in the spirit. First, the game is always known for its commercials. I read this year they're going for some slots as high as $7 million for a 30-second spot. When you spend that kind of money, you want it to be good. So which commercials have been good? Well, they've been ranked, as you would imagine. Let me tell you the top three of all time. Coming in at number 3 was the 2010 Snickers ad featuring a then 88-year-old Betty White getting flattened in a mud football game and then trash-talking the other players. It was hilarious. Number 2 was the iconic 1984 ad for Apple, playing off of George Orwell's novel, 1984, directed by Ridley Scott. If you remember, there was this huge runner, this female runner coming with this huge hammer and throws it at this Big Brother screen, kind of toppling IBM with the tagline, "Why 1984 won't be like 1984." And if you're completely unfamiliar with that commercial, then I officially just dated myself. But I'm not the one ranking them. Coming in at number 1, aired during Super Bowl 14 back in 1980, was one that had a 9-year-old kid melt down the baddest, meanest Pittsburgh Steeler ever, Mean Joe Green. Take a look. Well, now let's talk halftime shows. These obviously have been ranked as well. But I found it interesting that the ones that I thought would be at the top 3, I had a pretty good idea what was number 1 because it was one of my favorites. But the Stones didn't make the cut. Lady Gaga, even Bruce Springsteen didn't crack the top 3. Here's who did. Coming in at number 3 from 2013 was Beyonce teaming up with Destiny's Child. Number 2 was Michael Jackson's 1993 show. But coming in at number 1, and this wasn't even close, and this would have been my pick, was from 2007. Let me give you a taste. Okay, I know. I hate to cut away from that too. He did it in the rain. It was just epic. But what about the game itself? This will be Super Bowl 56, what was considered to be the best Super Bowl ever played. Well, according to NFL.com, and I'm sure there's differences of opinion, but NFL.com ranked them all, and here were the top 3. Coming in third was Super Bowl 49, when the New England Patriots beat the Seattle Seahawks 28-24, one of the few years that the two teams that had been considered the best and had the best records and were the two best teams actually played in the Super Bowl. Coming in at number 2 was Super Bowl 42, when the New York Giants beat the Patriots 17-14. Not exactly a high-scoring affair, but a defensive masterpiece. Coming in at number 1, though, takes us all the way back to January of 1979, Super Bowl 13, when the Pittsburgh Steelers, led by Terry Bradshaw, beat the Dallas Cowboys 35-31. Here's a taste of how it ended. Well, that was fun, but it's not just Super Bowl weekend, is it? It is also Valentine's Day weekend, which is one of the reasons we're starting a 3-week series on love. But not just love in general, but learning how to love, the actual practice of love, which is crucial because most people only have a sentimental grasp of love, whether it's some romantic comedy like, Pretty Woman getting rescued, or even the Avenger movies and Captain America going all the way back in time to finally get that dance with his girl. But what about real love, real relationships, and real calls of embodying that with another person? That's what this series is going to be about, which means it's going to have some grit to it, some depth to it, a lot of specificity. We're going to look at the 4 main words for love in the Greek language, which was the language of the New Testament. And that's going to open up a lot of things for us because we just have one word for love in English, but the Greek language has a lot more. We'll look at those different words. We'll also look at the different love languages that we all have. Ones that we speak more naturally than others, and the ones that we tend to need to hear ourselves more, and how that plays in marriage and parenting and friendship. And so we'll get into love language. But today we're going to walk through the Bible's most complete teaching on the nature and dynamics of love. It's actually been called the great love chapter of the Bible. It was written by the Apostle Paul, and it was to a group of Christians living in the city of Corinth. They were getting so much wrong in terms of what it meant to follow Jesus. And Paul was writing to address a lot of it. And one of the worst things that they had been doing was really separating religious fervor from true, authentic spirituality. I mean, they embraced all the outer, ecstatic, even charismatic aspects of religion. They were into all that kind of stuff, but not spirituality. They were living grossly immoral lives, but singing Jesus songs every weekend. They were attempting to put Jesus on like a jacket, but had nothing to do with him having a part in their actual life and calling. And Paul was writing to address all of that. And when he finally gets to this section, he really wants to drive home the nature of true, authentic spirituality. If you're really going to have Jesus and follow Jesus, you've got to get this. And it was about love. Here's what he wrote. He said, "If I could speak all the languages of earth and of angels, but I didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy, and if I understood all of God's secret plans and possessed all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains, but didn't love others, I would be nothing. If I gave everything I have to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it, but if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing. 3 things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love." If you take those words in, really take them in, it's staggering. Paul says there is nothing in your life, nothing you will do or ever accomplish spiritually that matters if there is an absence of love. Imagine if this was being written to you, if Paul wrote this letter to you, exposing all that you had done or were doing in relation to God in light of the potential absence of the presence of love. I don't know what words he would choose. I don't know how it would play out for you. I know how it would for mine. Here's how it would be written out for me. If you abandon everything in answer to my call and go to seminary and prepare for a life of ministry, but do not have love, you are nothing. If you take massive leaps of faith driving to a city in a U-Haul without knowing where your next meal is coming from in order to plant a church, but do not have love, you have done nothing. If you serve for decades, deliver countless messages, baptize thousands, you could boast about it. But if you do not have love, you have gained nothing. If you write books on the Christian life, teach at conferences, mentor other pastors, but do not have love, you are just noise. That's how it would be written for me. How would it be written for you? What have you done with your life that you have prided yourself about, maybe been comforted by spiritually? Maybe you even sacrificed for it, but in truth, divorced from love, have you reminded yourself that it means nothing? So what does it mean then to love? Really love. Because love isn't about a feeling. It's not a concept or an idea. It's about concrete choices. It's a commitment of mind and a commitment of will. So what are those commitments? What are those choices when it comes to love? That's what Paul gives us next. Love is patient. Love is kind. Does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. There are 14 concrete choices in what we just read. And together they give the clearest picture that I know of what it means to actually love someone. And I can walk through them very, very quickly. But then I want to give you some homework at the end that shouldn't be done quickly. It should be taken with some time. But let me just kind of teach through this really quick so you get the concepts, but then I got some homework. So first, love is patience. Patience is the will. It's the choice to wait or endure without complaint. Patience is not a gift. It's a decision. You make the decision to be patient when you are faced with something trying your patience, something that is tempting you to be impatient. And the word that Paul used that we translate as patience carries with it this idea of a sense of long suffering. And that's key, because when we get impatient, we feel our impatience is justified because of what is happening or what someone is doing to us. we put it all onto them, and therefore we have the right to be impatient. No. It's our choice. Will we choose to be long-suffering? Intentionally choosing patience is what it means to love. Next, love is also kind. If someone is kind, they're sympathetic, they're gentle, they're tender-hearted, they're generous, they give of themselves in service to others. It's the opposite of being unsympathetic or harsh or cold or hard-hearted or being stingy. We think of random acts of kindness like letting someone get in front of us in a line, or maybe in a drive-through fast food place, you pay for the person's food who's behind you. And those things are acts of kindness. But Paul is really after here the spirit that results in kindness, a posture of kindness, and the love that drives it. Next, Paul writes that love does not envy. Now, you may wonder, why is he bringing up envy? I mean, well, if you know much about envy, which I know is not something that most people even want to think about because it can get uncomfortable, but how it works, it's absolutely spot on. Envy begins with desire. We see something that somebody has or that they can do or has achieved, and we wish we had it or we could do it or we had achieved it. So someone who makes $50,000 a year envies the person who makes $250,000 a year. The person who is a C student envies the A student. But that's just where it begins. If left unchecked, the desire for the thing turns into a dislike for the person who has the thing. That's actually what the word envy means. To look on someone with malice, to have an evil eye toward someone. Love doesn't do that. Instead, love rejoices with those who rejoice. It celebrates with those who celebrate. It is happy for those who are happy. Next, Paul writes that love does not boast. The idea here is bragging about yourself, draw attention to yourself. In other words, love isn't concerned with self-promotion or self-assertion. It cares more about giving of itself. Love isn't narcissistic. In Greek mythology, Narcissus is a character who, upon passing his reflection in the water, becomes so enamored with himself that he devotes the rest of his life to staring at his own reflection. From this, we get our term narcissism, this preoccupation with self. The value of narcissism is the classic I, me, mine mentality. Love doesn't know anything about an I, me, mine mentality. Next, Paul says that love is not proud. Literally, in the original Greek language, it reads, love is not puffed up. Instead, it's marked by humility. In fact, earlier in the letter, Paul wrote to the Corinthians, he said, listen, your pride puffs up, but love builds up. Next, love does not dishonor others. It doesn't do anything that would embarrass them, shame them, disgrace them, denigrate them. Instead, love honors people. Then Paul notes that love is not self-seeking. Instead, it prioritizes others. It makes the needs of others the driving interest. There's no sense of using people, of manipulating people for personal gain. We live in a day when it's all about our rights and our needs, and we look to other people as their role is to serve us and to fill us and complete us. Love, though, is not self-seeking. Next, love is not easily angered. You know, anger really is something you cultivate, that you give into. A quick temper and an easy anger come from a life that has never attempted to show restraint in those areas, a life that has given it permission to run rampant in their life. One of the things that I think has happened over the last 2 years is that we've done that as a culture. We've just kind of given in to our anger and almost given ourselves permission to give in to our anger. And we lash out and we take offense. We have a chip on our shoulder. Road rage is up. And it's just... it's as if our collectively we've decided we're going to be eager to take offense. There's nothing about love with that. So there's 8 of the 14 marks. Let me just pause there for a minute and reread them. And we're going to put this up on the screen so that you can actually see what I mean by how we're marking all these different aspects. So let me just read it. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. Now, before we move on, most of those are pretty straightforward. And one of the ways, though, to kind of go a little deeper with those is with each one, swap out the word love and put in the word Jesus for an even deeper portrait of each one, because he alone perfectly fleshed love out. For example, love is not easily angered doesn't mean there isn't a place for anger. There is righteous anger. We know that because Jesus had righteous anger, for example, when he drove out the money changers. So that gives us a deeper view of what that aspect of love can mean. And saying that love is kind doesn't mean simply, it just doesn't mean that you simply engage every person in every situation with mere pity. There's a place for wisdom and intelligence. To be patient also never would mean tolerating evil. But the next few marks Paul gives need a little fuller pastoral word. And so let me take you through those. Beginning with Paul writing that love keeps no record of wrongs. We know that any good relationship takes forgiveness. But that's not what Paul is talking about here. It's assuming forgiveness. It's talking about refusing to keep a record of wrongs. In other words, love involves the specific act of forgetfulness. That doesn't mean an actual loss of memory, just that you let it go. Just let it go. You don't keep it alive as an ever-present occurrence. I can't begin to tell you how many times that I've talked with someone who starts to tell me about something that happened in their marriage. And it was maybe 5 weeks ago or 5 months ago or sometimes even 5 years ago. And it is as fresh in their minds and hearts as if it happened that day. And because of that, for their life, it did. And they just can't get past it. And they've rehearsed it so many times in their minds that they've kept it alive. They've just cemented it in their psyche and heart. And now it's a wedge that they just can't get past. And they feel entitled to do that because the wrong was done to them. But see, that's not love. Love is choosing to not continue to remember in a way that you're clinging to it instead of releasing it. Love keeps no record of wrongs. Next, Paul writes that love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. A lot of people say, well, I'm not sure I understand that. Well, one of the great temptations we face is enjoying it when something bad happens to someone. The Germans have a word for it, Schadenfreude, and it means joy at the suffering of another. For example, let me just give an example of this that is a little touchy, but that's okay. Love cuts deep. Think about the big vaccination divide right now in our country. I've read some things people have written or posted that seem to celebrate it when someone has something bad happen to them, anything bad, after they've gotten vaccinated, because they're anti-vaccinations. And when somebody has something bad happen following a vaccination, even if it's a car wreck, they celebrate it, and they're secretly happy. Others celebrate and gloat and say, I told you so, or it serves them right, when an outspoken anti-vaxxer gets COVID and even dies. Love takes no pleasure in anything bad happening to anyone for any reason. Beautiful picture of this. I heard of a nurse working in the thick of all things pandemic in a hospital. Someone asked her if she dealt with any resentment for the people who haven't been vaccinated but are taking up ICU beds due to getting COVID. Thinking that they might get a snarky remark or comment or two from her filled with resentment, she said, actually, I don't. I don't look at them different. I don't treat them differently than anyone else. The truth is, we all make choices in life that can result ending up in a hospital. I know I do. And my job, she said, isn't to judge them, but to care for them, no matter what choice brought them to me. The point is that when they are there, regardless of what put them there, they're a human being who matters to God and needs medical care, and therefore they matter to me. Okay, that's love. Well, then Paul writes about love always protecting. The idea here is interesting. It's the idea of a shield, something that you would use to cover up for protection. And just think about how that might play out in a relationship like a marriage. Your goal in marriage would be to do everything you can to guard, shield, or cover your spouse from being hurt or wounded. Now, most would say, oh, I've got that one covered. I would do anything, like a man would say, I would do anything to protect my wife. And he's thinking physical. That's not really what Paul's talking about. This is about protecting your wife from you, because nobody can hurt her like you. And I'm not even talking about the dark, insidious evil of physical abuse. I'm talking about the emotional wounding we can do. No one can hurt her, men. No one can hurt her like you. And wives, no one can wound your husband more than you. We're talking about the love dynamic of protection within a relationship. Women, tear down his self-esteem by attacking his role as provider, or tell him that you have no respect for him, or do something to dishonor or humiliate him. The dagger right to the heart. Men, if you make sure she knows that you don't cherish her, if you talk about other women and compare her to them all the time, make comments about other women and all that she isn't, you might as well just take a baseball bat to her. Love protects. Then Paul ends with 3 last words. He says, love always trusts. That means you assume the best, not the worst. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You give them credit for their motives. He said, love always trusts. Love always hopes. It always holds out that whatever failure there might be, that failure is not going to be final. You're always rooting for them to be their best and become their best. And finally, and this is how he ends it, love always perseveres. That's a powerful one to end with. Persevering love. When I was a boy, I was given a piece of paper that molded my thinking deeply. I had it on my wall wherever we lived for years until it finally pretty much just fell apart with age. It was the words of Calvin Coolidge, 30th President of the United States. It was delivered in a speech on January 17th, 1925. And it just said, it's simply titled, Press On. And let me read it to you. Nothing in the world can take the place of perseverance. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. No, persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. Now, Coolidge was talking about what marks the life of great men and women who accomplish great things. But persistence and determination in the context of a relationship is also what it means to love, to press on. Well, ready for your homework? Take the 4 verses that lie at the heart of Paul's description of love in this letter to the Corinthians. And again, there are 14 marks. Let me read it again. And as I do, you'll see how we've numbered each one of these 14 so that you can get the feel of the homework assignment. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Okay, your homework. Go through that slowly. Even write it out longhand or type it out. And as you go through it slowly, there's 3 questions you ask yourself. First, go through it and ask yourself, how do you see Jesus loving like this? Being loving like this? Just kind of bring to mind what you know, what you've read, maybe what you can dig into and read afresh in the Bible about Jesus. How did he flesh out patience? What did it look like when he was kind? Where did he have hope? Where was there perseverance and love acting this way? Get a deeper picture. Then second, ask yourself how you see this, or if you're like me, how you do not see this, these marks in yourself. Just kind of do a self-inventory. You know, where do I see patience? Where do I not see patience in my life? Where am I keeping a record of wrongs? Or then finally, again, just as you slowly go through each mark, ask yourself, what are the ways, if you were to love like this, it would work out in practice? What would it change about how you parented your child today? What would it make a difference in terms of how you interact with your spouse? What would it look like in real life with the people who are in your life, particularly the ones closest to you? And don't just do this slowly and reflectively, but do it prayerfully. The goal isn't to pat yourself on the back or to make yourself get into a fetal position with guilt, but to move toward being more loving. Well, next week, we're going to continue on learning how to love with a look at the different kinds of love languages they are. We all speak love differently. We all hear and receive love differently. Knowing about that and the way the most important relationships in your life speak and hear love is just a game changer. And we're going to walk through the 5 major love languages and what they're like, and give me some help with how you can know which one is yours and which one is your daughter's or your son's or your spouse's. So we're going to get into love languages next week, and you get to learn about yours and the ones closest to you. Well, until then, let me pray for you. Father, I'm not a good lover, and I confess that before you, and I can be so much better, and I want to be better. So I pray first and foremost that I would continue to go through these 14 marks slowly and prayerfully and let growth happen as I'm increasingly sensitized and as I call on you to help. I pray that also for others who probably feel the same way as I do. And also, if we're honest, there was probably one or more of those 14 that stung more than the others. That's worth taking note of. Wherever we're convicted of not being loving is where we need to begin working on love the most. Well, that's my prayer for me. That's my prayer for you. And I pray it in the name of Jesus.